I'll be your host for this week's episode of Undercurrent. In the lead up to Centenary of Armistice in November, RSL WA has received a grant to continue educating the community about this milestone. Bas Tadros was at Parliament House to find out more.
Light horsemen pay homage today of 100 years sacrifice and service. Today is a special day where there's a grant from Lottery West to RSL of $298,850 that's going to be activating and spreading more statewide activity by RSL to commemorate the 100 years. I'm here with Kelvin at the front of Parliament House. Kelvin, how are you today?
I'm very well, thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Kelvin, tell us about your involvement.
I'm a member of the Kelmscott-Pinjarra 10th Flight Horse Memorial Troop, and our role in the community is to go to community events and at events such as this. We're here on behalf of the RSL this morning to receive a cheque from Lotteries West to be presented, which is what I have in my hand here. So I'll be handing this to the Premier very shortly. The 11th November is a very synonymous day with the rest of the world because it was the day that peace was signed in the Forest of Versailles in France, which ended the First World War. A ceasefire was brokered and everybody honoured that ceasefire. And so 4 years of bitter fighting and total loss of life came to an end, and we all remember those that paid the ultimate sacrifice.
I found out that my great uncle fought in the 8th Light Horse, went over to Beersheba in Egypt, so I had a bit more of a renewed interest in keeping the history alive. And just to get out to the community and actually share this with the people, and a lot of people don't get to see horses or just exactly what they had to do back in World War I.
The actual signing of the surrender didn't occur until the next year, but the actual cessation of hostilities, that occurred, as we now know, the 11th each year.
Something that we commemorate and remember?
It is, but when you look through the commemorations, we've just gone through the period of the centenary of Anzac. It's been all about commemorating battles and the actual conflict. The commemoration of armistice really comes down to the community celebration that the hostilities are over. So we're now actually taking it away from the battle side of it and to the communities and their relief that the war was finally over.
Wonderful. And what would a grant such as this 300 grand mean to the RSL?
Well, it means that each of our sub-branches that are putting on commemorations and celebrations, for that matter, on the 11th of November, will have the basic funding to allow them to go ahead and do that. But I must say it's also in conjunction with the various local councils and organisations in their local communities.
This is an opportunity for the state of Western Australia to support the RSL in their work, in their program to commemorate and, in this case, celebrate the centenary, the 100 years of the end of the First World War, the centenary of armistice, as they call it. And we wanted to make a significant statement, so we've granted $290,000 to the RSL to help fund some of the activities that are happening out in the towns and suburbs across Western Australia, to make sure the narrative of our past, if you like, is completely understood by the next generations. And 100 years after the worst conflict the globe had seen at that time, it deserves that sort of commemoration. And as I say, the 1919, the year after the end of the First World War, was a great story for Western Australia because of all those returning soldiers and the economic activity that we received as a result of them going back into the workforce.
It's a decent grant and it's a wonderful occasion to be here today in front of Parliament House. What would the government like to see this grant go towards for the RSL?
We're really clear. We want to spread the word as far and as wide as we can to the next generation of Western Australians about the sacrifice of those that went before them. And so as a result of that, the sub-branches of the RSL, the local, have all applied through their own, the RSL in Western Australia for access to a grant to help defray some of the costs of actually doing that work. So some are going into primary schools and talking about the lived experience of a particular veteran through the whole war, Some are doing like the central activities, like a major picnic that's happening at Government House, those sorts of things. That's where it's going. It's not just the government money that's been put into this. The RSL themselves fund a significant amount from their own resources. So, and not to mention the countless hours of the volunteers of the RSL, the veterans themselves that go out and do this sort of work. So it's a fantastic opportunity to do that.
I'm Bas Tadros for Undercurrent.
WTV reporter James Rogers brings you this special report into child sexual abuse and the prevention of it within your community.
The Royal Commission has revealed a shocking history of child sexual abuse in Australian institutions. But what are we doing to prevent abuse in the wider community?
The very nature of child abuse means that those who commit these crimes are likely to gravitate to a wide range of organisations, which the Catholic Church is but one of many. Child protection is everyone's business, everyone's. We all can and must play a part in protecting and safeguarding all children, wherever they may be.
In 2016, I looked at what the Catholic Church in Perth is doing to prevent child sexual abuse.
The Safeguarding Project has been implemented in order to create safer churches, or create the church as a child-safe organisation. That's our aim. Our aim is to transport the church into a safe organisation.
One of the very clear recommendations from the outcome of the current Royal Commission has been around prevention and ensuring that children have access to prevention education, and that's what WA Child Safety Services offers.
Now I focus on what WA Child Safety Services is doing to prevent abuse in the wider community, in line with Recommendation 6.2 from the final report of the Royal Commission, which the state government has accepted in principle.
We provide prevention education through the Protective Behaviours program, right from very young children in childcare services, through to primary schools, through to our Teen Talk program in high school settings. Prevention absolutely is critical to providing children with skills and strategies around child abuse prevention.
The Protective Behaviours program provides information to parents and children in a variety of areas.
We're providing parents with information around child sexual abuse, around the statistics and the prevalence of it. Unfortunately, it's way more prevalent than most people would know or would want to think about. We're looking at about 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 7 boys experience some form of sexual abuse before the age of 18.
According to Justine, it starts with teaching children the correct anatomical names for the private parts of the body.
We encourage that parents use that terminology and that they teach their children that terminology to take away that level of shame and embarrassment, because if children feel shame and embarrassment around those private parts of their body, and if something was to happen, either they had a question about the private parts of their body, they were hurting on the private parts of the body, or someone touched them inappropriately on the private parts of the body, if there's that level of shame and embarrassment, they may not actually go and speak to somebody about it. So that's really the first step. We also talk about that other people may miss the cues. So if a child was to talk about someone's putting their car into my garage, if that was the terminology they use for the private parts of the body, it may be missed by somebody who's not familiar with that particular terminology.
There have been cases where children as young as 10 have committed offences, and infants who have been victims, highlighting the importance of teaching appropriate behaviours from an early age.
Protective behaviours is developmentally and age appropriate, so we'll increase the level of information that we're providing to children at age and developmental stages that are correct for them. So consent in the early years is looking at someone hugging or kissing someone that may not want that we need to make sure that we're getting permission before we do that. And that moves right through the age groups, and thinking about things like consent of posting photographs online and social media when we're talking with our older teenagers.
Sex offenders try to keep their abuse secret with bribes or threats to continue offending. Protective Behaviours teaches children the difference between a safe secret and an unsafe secret.
So someone has to have the desire to commit these offences against children. Now, whilst there are a number of motivators, what we do know is one of the primary motivators is a sexual attraction to children. They then have to have an ability to commit the offence. So they need to know how to do it. And not only how to do it, but how to get away with it. And getting away with it allows them to continue to commit the offences.
So safe secret, for example, would be buying a birthday present for mum, and on Sunday we're going to give that to her. Between Thursday night and Sunday, we're not going to show mum the present, even though children might want to. They're going to keep that till Sunday, but Dad knows about the present because he took them to the shops, and Grandma knows because they helped them wrap them up when they got home. So that's a short time, happy outcome. Other people know it's just a surprise from mum. An unsafe secret is when someone tells you that you can't tell. They might threaten you that something bad will happen if you tell. They might say that you have to keep this secret forever. Those types of secrets, we want children to know that they can tell someone. So that's another big component of the Protected Behaviours program.
So a number of these perpetrators have learnt the behaviour. A number of the perpetrators who weren't victims will seek out that information or consort with other sex offenders and learn how to commit those offences, because it's not as black and white as it would seem. There's a whole process to child sexual abuse, and it's called grooming, or another word is entrapment, and that's a whole process in itself.
Our statistics would tell us anywhere between 90 to 95% of the time when a child is harmed, they're harmed by somebody that they already know. That breakdown is roughly around 30% of the time it's a family member, around 60% of the time it's somebody within the broader community, and 10% of the time it may be someone that they don't know. So if the only message we give children is stranger danger, don't speak to strangers, we actually are not giving them the message that they need.
Statistics show that most sexual abuse happens within the family unit, making it difficult for a child to seek help when they need to.
We use often the hand analogy, where children will draw around their hand. On the thumb, they'll write the names of the people perhaps in their family that they feel have those network qualities, would listen, believe and help them. And on their forefingers, they'll write names of people outside of their family. So they might include a teacher or a sports coach or a neighbour or one of their parents, one of their friends' parents. And it's really important that they know how to get in contact with those people. So whether it's by going to see them because they see them at school, or being able to ring them or to message them. Because children need to know that there will be adults in their lives that will listen to them, believe them and help them to feel safe again. Many children who have experienced abuse historically have thought that adults won't listen to them, because that's often the message that perpetrators have given them. This is our secret, no one will believe you anyway.
And collectively those two ingredients make up 20% of the recipe, but 80% of the recipe comes down to opportunity. And unfortunately, anywhere where children are, there is opportunity.
Keeping our children safe is everybody's responsibility. Parents, community members working together, giving the same message, teachers, schools and childcare centres giving the same message. Together we can empower ourselves, we can empower our children, and we can create safer communities.
If you require support, contact one of the following services. James Rogers for Undercurrent.
Stay tuned for more Perth community topics after the break.